If you think of yourself as having a great idea and being disconnected from the world, not, trying to rely on anyone or ask for help, you're probably not going to make it. I'm Rand. I'm an assistant professor at ESCP. I actually teach entrepreneurship and innovation. I've been at ESCP for the past 2 years. I'm also an honorary research fellow in Imperial College in London. So I mainly teach entrepreneurship, but I also coach entrepreneurs, and I do research on entrepreneurial networks, on open innovation and creativity in organizations. Startup ecosystems are basically areas, so they are locations, geographic locations, where there is a high concentration of startups. So for instance, it could be London, it could be the Silicon Valley, it could be Paris, and usually it's an area that doesn't necessarily historically have startups, but for some reason there's an attraction of startups to that region. It could either be the government that encourages a startup ecosystem, or it could emerge entirely naturally. One of the challenges of entrepreneurs, especially when they move to new cities, to new ecosystems, or even, they pivot to new markets, they don't have a network in place. So what we see in many examples is entrepreneurs, let's say, that work in finance but want to launch a startup in artificial intelligence. They have a network in finance, but they don't have a network in artificial intelligence. So they kind of have to build this network from scratch. Some entrepreneurs have strategies that they follow. So for instance, one of the strategies that's very interesting is going on stage, so trying to become speakers at events so that they kind of create this visibility around their startup, around their name, and then they start attracting the network to them. A second approach that some entrepreneurs take as well is to create their own events. So they kind of host dinners around specific topics, and that really also gives them legitimacy in the market, but also, kind of gives them, again, this position of authority and facilitates building networks. Definitely, there's been multiple studies, and a study I'm also conducting on, trying to establish connections between networks and startup success. What we find is that networks are the biggest factor that predicts startup success. So, the quality of your network, you can have a great idea, but if you don't have, people behind you, it's going to be very difficult. What we see quite often is that in a startup we have two co-founders. So one co-founder who's more the CTO, who's doing the coding, the technical part of the startup, of growing the startup. And then we see that there's the CEO who's doing networking full-time. And what we find as well is that networking is work for startups. So for the entrepreneur, it's a big part of their job description, let's say. And it's as you mentioned, it has to be part of the business plan.